SoCalQOL. Hello, hello, hello. It is Tuesday. We are so happy it's Tuesday. So much so that we use the acronym SHIT to describe it. I'm sure I'll stop using that, but I've had it for a very long time. Anyways, hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. And it being Tuesday, we kind of have two themes that we do on Tuesdays. One is Transformation Tuesday, which we did last week. I was going to do that today to update you guys on where I stand on the 365 experiment, hashtag 365 experiment. But I decided right before this to shift gears and do Intellectual Tuesday. Say another theme that I wanted to go with in general on Tuesdays. But because we haven't introduced that, I felt like it was more important to talk about that just so everyone gets a broader understanding of the podcast, what it can be, what it won't be. Won't. It won't. With that, I'm going to take a drink of my amazing green tea, hot green tea with liquid stevia, which makes it super sweet, sweeter than regular sugar, but it has no carbs. Woohoo! Okay, so starting off with Intellectual Tuesday, I have a chart. I have a chart that I found. It was either in the last year or maybe at the end of 2017. Could be wrong. But it is basically called the Cone of Learning. Now, for everyone listening, I'm not going to show the picture on the YouTube podcast side because I would love for you guys to go to our social media. So I'll post it sometime today so where you can see it. But it is essentially called the Cone of Learning, and it's in the background is a upside down triangle. So think of the pyramids, but flipped upside down. So it goes from top to bottom. It's big to small or wide to thin. There's three sections. On the left-hand side, it says, after 2 weeks, we tend to remember. In the middle, there's nothing because it's almost like the things that we do to learn certain things intellectually. And then on the right side, it says nature of involvement. So this first nature of involvement, which is the most broad, but it also, or I shouldn't say broad, it's the most impactful. And it's the thing that we would actually remember the most in learning as far as intellectual wellness goes. I believe I said it's active. No, I didn't. So it's the active part of the learning that we do that actually has the most impact with us. And so these first three things I'm going to talk about are 90% of what we say and do. So 90% of what we say and do after 2 weeks, we tend to remember. First thing at the very top is doing the real thing. I think we can all relate that when we do this, watching pictures, looking at video, staring at pictures, when we're actually doing the real thing, like digging a hole, or I'm actually going to use this because I'm going to talk about it later, cutting your own hair, you're going to learn 90% more of cutting your own hair or digging a hole by actually doing it. And you will retain that information for at least 2 weeks, or at least we tend to remember for the next 2 weeks. So once again, that's the nature of involvement is active. So we're talking about active things that we're doing to intellectually remember how we learn something, learning a knowledge base, understanding new ideas and encountering new ideas, so on and so forth. Next thing is simulating the real experience. I guess you could say VR, possibly AR, but another way I can compute that is, seeing like on-site, in your face, here is the actual thing, I can touch it if I want to. So it's the simulating the real experience. Or you're doing like, air shoveling, air haircutting, air guitaring, whatever, air fat swinging, whatever you want to call it. So simulating the real experience. And then the third thing in this 90%, uh, what is it called? Percentile is doing a dramatic presentation. So if anyone's ever been in drama, if anyone's ever been in a class, a lot of times what happens is they'll bring you up to the front. They'll say, Johnny, you're person A, Claudia, you're person B. Here's the interaction, or here's what you're going to do. Try it. Or if it's being interviewed for a job, if it's giving a speech and going through the motions via a class in like super slow-mo and discussing all the things. So uh but yeah, I would say for the most part it's almost like practice, I guess. I would say that doing a dramatic presentation would be like practicing the real thing. So that's great. Okay. So next category of what we tend to learn after 2 weeks is 70% of what we say. So giving a talk. So kind of stems off of, doing an interview or giving a speech or pretending to give a speech, pretending to give an interview or have an interview or however you take it. So that essentially is a part of the active nature of involvement, but it's 70% of what we say. And the last in that category is participating in a discussion. So if you're in a debate, if you're taking do they have verbal tests? Yes? No? Verbal tests? No. The other one I should have said was podcasting. Hey, I'm participating in a discussion. Obviously, I don't have anyone necessarily next to me right now talking and discussing things with me. But in a weird way, I feel like I'm having a discussion with you guys because I can think about what you guys think about in order to bring up new questions, new topics, new pieces of conversation. So, all right. So now we're going to transition to the passive nature of involvement in our cone of learning. And after 2 weeks, we tend to remember 50% of what we see. Oh, yeah, what we hear and see, or see and hear, whatever. So, top of that category is seeing it done on location. Okay. So, let's say you're starting a new job. They ask you to come to the job site, the office. I don't know if you're in film and you're on location as far as filming a movie or a show or a commercial. You're there, you're seeing it done, but you are by no means actually physically doing anything. So you're basically tied down, you're, stuck to a chair, and they literally just say, just see it done on location. Next thing is almost identical, except for you're really not on location. So the point is watching a demonstration. So I'm assuming that even if let's say it's film based, like you would film something on location, instead of it being on location, you're actually in the studio or in a classroom. Other type of demonstration could be possibly watching a video of the demonstration or um, maybe even pictures, but you're still watching it. You're passive. You're not physically doing anything. You're hearing things and you're seeing things. 3 out of 4, looking at an exhibit, watching a demonstration. So this one's kind of weird. I've always reread this one and tried to really understand the grasp of what it's trying to say. So it's watching a demonstration, but you're looking at an exhibit of that. So first thing that comes to mind is like you go to a museum and you're looking at Neanderthals or you're looking at mammoths or you're looking at dinosaurs and you're seeing a demonstration of the time or the action or the method of doing something, and it's an exhibit. It's something that people actually come to look at, and it's like always there, you know. It's not just visually on TV, and it's also not like temporarily there because people are doing it in person for a job or a play or whatever. And then last in this 50% of what we hear and see in the passive involvement is watching a movie. I think we can all relate to that. I think a good amount of the video content that we all consume is probably a movie. And because movies take up at least, you know, anywhere from an hour to 2 or 3 hours, it'll probably end up being a majority of what we watch. Even if we only watch one movie, it could bypass multiple shows because shows can only be, you know, 20 to 30, possibly 45 minutes, but it's still more than that for just one movie. And yeah, I love movies because you can feel things, you can emotionally, you can also feel things physically. So if you have a nice sound system or you're at a IMAX theater, you know, it's you can really feel and be in the moment. And that's, you know, obviously the directors and the producers' job, videographers, is to make you lose your sense of self and be put into a location or a demonstration or a story. So that's, you know, obviously a huge part so far of the cone of learning. We're now hitting like the little tippy top. Almost think of the dollar bill with the all-seeing eye disconnected from the pyramid, and that little triangle with the eyeball. That's basically where we're at now. So it's the smallest portion of our cone of learning, and it's still in the passive involvement. And each one only has 1 point. So 30% of what we see that we actually tend to remember after 2 weeks is looking at pictures. So, Instagram, right off the bat. Obviously, Instagram has videos, maybe even Twitter, maybe even Facebook. But those pictures are a good representation of what we see, we'll tend to remember after 2 weeks. So, if you're watching a how to, or actually, you know what? Even a better example, and I should have started with this, is Pinterest. Going on Pinterest. I don't believe they do video. I could be wrong, but they do a great job of like you have a demonstration of something, and instead of it like scrolling, really, it's honestly just one picture. Could be in real life. It looks like it's 3 or 4 feet high of just little pictures going down, and you can literally zoom in and see all the little pieces. But for the most part, it's literally just pictures. So what we see there, 30% of that is we tend to remember after 2 weeks. The 20% of passive involvement that we remember, tend to remember after 2 weeks is what we hear. So hearing words, hearing, but even in our podcast, we do have, you know, we have music, we have intro, outros, we have, you know, whatever. If there's a video clip you're playing of something, you'll hear that. But so I guess we're just talking hearing words. So book on tape. I don't think a lot of books on tape have music, but I know some of them do. So maybe that's a different type of book on tape. And last but not least is 10% of what we read, we actually tend to remember after 2 weeks, which is really depressing because how much of our schooling is done by simply just reading. Like if high school, elementary school, even preschool was just doing the real thing, like you know, if you draw a picture of something like a location, you would actually learn more from it by just going to the location and looking at it. Or, if you're drawing a picture of someone surfing or skateboarding or playing guitar, you're going to actually learn more from it by just doing the thing. Obviously, that's pulling it out of context, but it just goes to show you, like, just that little tweak of an idea. Like, if I was a elementary, middle school, high school teacher, and I really wanted my kids to get something, to get a concept, to get an idea, I would probably take them on location, or I would have them do the real thing. Like, we've talked about it before in podcasts, but as far as economics goes and learning that in school, like, you could read about doing your taxes all day, but until you actually do taxes, you probably won't remember it the way you should. You won't grasp the concept, and you won't be able to take it with you for the long term. So, yeah, I I'm I'm a firm believer, and if you can just start at hearing words, go that route, because reading is, like, you can hear and tell by this cone of learning. It's a super small aspect of actually what we tend to remember. And so I wanted to start off with that, because that's actually, like, this whole cone of learning is how I want to not only interpret wellness programs that SoCalQOL provides for companies, but even individuals. If you're at home doing a workout, I want you to do the real thing so that you remember it long term. And when it comes to me, this is where I get to talk more personally. I I love listening to stuff. I grew up listening to music and inevitably started playing guitar, but I've always gravitated towards listening. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't necessarily hearing the words that I was listening to. So if 20% of what I hear is only learned from words, then I could I could I could be a firm believer in that doesn't always work. It would be better for you to read the lyrics, listen to the words, look at pictures of the lyrics, or even see a music video of the song, so that you can get all those different types of involvement, even if it is passive. The idea is that you're getting more depth to what you're actually trying to understand. But for me, hearing music is a huge, or was a huge part of my upbringing. Now, because I'm so trained to listening to something, like, I could listen to stuff all day. I could have my, headphones in all day and not skip a beat. But I've definitely gravitated towards listening to podcasts. I have a few books on tape that aren't like the legit ones. They're more like, they sound homemade, really. But even for, like, right now, I'm learning real estate. A good friend of mine who I'm gonna try to have on our podcast, him and I have talked about starting a real estate company that is, I mean, we're still figuring out exactly what it's gonna do, but it's kind of like SoCalQOL, but in the real estate market. So it's adding value to people basically for free, teaching everyone tricks of the trade, and the goal is to buy and sell homes. But what's funny is that in the midst of me trying to, learn the real estate market, getting the books and learning the materials so that I can take and pass a real estate exam, I actually do this thing where I record myself saying different definitions, different topics, and pinpoint of, you know, terms that I should know, and the wording and all that good stuff. So I'll go through the curriculum that I'm supposed to learn. And granted, I've only done this a few times, and I can't guarantee that it works, but it's just the initial way that I try to absorb the information. Looking at the cone, of course, I know that's, if anything, only 20% of what I'm actually going to remember is through this process, even though I am, I'm looking at quote unquote pictures of the words put on a page, but I'm hearing the words every day because I can throw it on a podcast, or sorry, not a podcast, but my headphones in a playlist, and I've already done the reading aspect. So it's almost like I'm going up the cone from the bottom. So I start with reading, and I hear the words actually as I'm recording them, but also as after the fact I listen back later. In the future, I would love to look at pictures, watch a movie, uh, watch a demonstration, see it done on location. And then as far as the active part, I'm going to start podcasting with this individual so that we can have a discussion. The 70% of what we say, I'll actually remember. I can actually say that's super true when I'm discussing something, talking, like I'm giving a talk right now, but even participating in a discussion, I'm going to absorb the information that I learned back at that 10 and 20% of the cone, and be able to almost honestly apply it. So, anyways, I'm like reverse engineering instead of just going out and doing the real thing. Like I can't go out and sell someone a house because I haven't got the license yet. So I gotta start from the bottom. But yeah, so something that I've done in the past, and I did it with my securities exam, which I never passed. So can't tell you that that method works, but I can tell you that I never went past just hearing the words. I stopped at that 20%. If I would have kept going, even though I have watched movies on the securities market like The Big Short, and I've I've tried to look at demonstrations or just how people, use the securities industry to make a living on YouTube and all that good stuff, but never got to the active part. I've never had a discussion, I've never given a talk, I've never done the real thing. I've never been able to sell a securities product because, like I said before, if you don't have the license, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you even try, because it's not practical. But so as I'm learning the real estate stuff and going through that process, and then hopefully going to have a podcast soon to where we can discuss the topics, I know I'm going to absorb it, and I've got a good amount of time to do it as well. So obviously if you're in high school and you're trying to pass a test next week, doing that method is not practical. But if you're a full-time employee and you're also hustling on the side, you've been married, you're planning on having kids, I think this essentially is a more tangible way of absorbing the information. But at the end of the day, the goal would be to do the real thing after you get a license or certification. And everyone's going to have their own way of learning. If anything, I think it would be an amazing thing, branching off from this cone of learning, if there was a company that simply just did all these things for you in a certain subject, almost like the master class, but for like everyday things, or like I've said, securities industry and real estate exam, so on and so forth. So hopefully I'm going to cut this shorter than, I can't remember the last long podcast I had, but as we hit about 24, 25 minutes, I just wanted to give a quick example, or maybe a few examples of intellectual wellness, and it was actually on a podcast. Hey, look at that. And we were talking about cutting your own hair. And my friend cuts his own hair. And I've always been super impressed by that because I've had my hair cut, obviously, like how we all do when we go to a hairstylist or a barber. And after you get your hair cut, you assume that this person's gone to classes, has done all the work, bought all the tools, has the experience of cutting other people's hair and screwing up other people's, dues, and cutting people's hair too short, so that when they do your hair, it's obviously not a problem, and they can do it, and you trust them. You don't feel like you need to question their abilities. So, But when you look at learning a new trade, or even doing something around the house, or just understanding a new concept, you will always trust yourself, even if you screw it up and you're doing it in your own home, or for, to your own hair, or sewing your own clothes, or whatever it is. You're gonna at least trust yourself to do enough research before you start doing that action. And so, but for me, there's certain things that I won't even attempt to do it. I won't even think about attempting to do it unless I know someone else who does it themselves as well, and I trust them, and they can kind of give me that push, hold me accountable to doing the thing that I would like to do. And one of those things was cutting my own hair, because my hair is not complicated. Barbers do it in like 15 minutes. And like, even if it took me twice as long, I'm down to try for 30 minutes how to cut my own hair. And there's only the physics of it where if you have to cut the back, you got to have mirrors, you have to have some kind of clippers and some kind of scissors. So, but a lot of times I'll psych myself out. I'll convince myself, oh, I can't cut my own hair because my clippers suck, or I can't cut my hair because I don't have the right scissors, or I don't have a comb. I don't have the right comb. There's so many things that we can do as human beings to, like I said, psych ourselves out, unmotivate ourselves, and pull us out of what we actually know is going to make us happy. And so after my friend told me that he just he just knows what he likes. He, like in music, like he's a musician, so when he doesn't necessarily know the theory behind a lot of stuff, but he knows when something feels right. He knows when a groove is good. He knows when a chord progression is awesome. He knows when a song is great, because he's had experience in just being a fan. For example, for the hair thing, he knows what his hair looks like when it looks good. So now that he has that experience, he's like, okay, well, if I try to cut it a certain way after I research it on YouTube and all that stuff, then I'll know if I can do it, or I know what I'll like because I'll cut it. So I've already cut my hair twice. I believe I cut it right before New Year's. And then, did I cut it more recently than that? No. Okay, so New Year's was the last time I cut it. And then like a couple weeks before that, I just kind of touched up the sides. So I started with just the sides, because the sides, at least I was like, well, if I cut it too short, it'll at least grow out. And the top, I'll just let it be, because it wasn't too long either. But by the time New Year's came around, I was going to see my in-laws. I I didn't want to necessarily cut it too short, but I also wanted to, make it look decent. So I actually don't have any product in my hair right now, which is fun. But all that to be said, I watched a few videos online, and there's a point when we learn something. This stems back to where I was learning how your body, or at least how I like to interpret my body, taking in food, certain types of food, and processing it as fuel, and why glucose fuel is, to me, hard like carbohydrates and all that good stuff. Good stuff. you you're gonna have to replenish that. Almost, I mean, you can kind of compare it to like electric cars versus gasoline. It's kind of the same, but not really. I don't know. I also thought of it as like, doing solar at your house versus simply getting electricity from, your electricity company. But just stemming back to now I lost my train of thought. But when you're stepping back to just simply learning something, like for me, cutting my hair, I just I just started cutting, and I felt it out. I just started cutting, felt it out, was cutting, and when I would cut too short, or I would kind of go against the method that I was learning, I would kind of recess, a recess. I would reset. I would maybe watch the video a little bit more or replay the part of the video that I was doing actually on my hair. And oh yeah, this is what I was getting at with the whole diet thing is you just need to grasp and understand a concept enough to where you can relate, you can understand it, and if you had to, you could teach it again. So many things in our life we that are so simple that we could learn in a heartbeat, but we kind of just plead the fifth, or we just plead ignorance, and we just ignore that trade or that job or that task just because I'm sure we all think there's only so much things that we can remember. So if I don't worry about that one thing, it's not going to clog my brain with other stuff that I don't want to worry about. But there's also something else to be said about being empowered. And I mean, if cutting your own hair gives you the momentum and confidence to then start attacking your diet or starting to work out or starting to study for that exam or whatever other things that you've been trying to tackle, then maybe we need to get into a culture of that. We need to get into a community of people that constantly strive to upgrade our knowledge, become more intellectually aware, and essentially bring up that part of our wellness. And so for me, after I cut my hair, I didn't have the same, euphoric resolution from what I did when I learned about dieting and being active, but it definitely gave me a little boost of confidence that day at least. And hey, confidence in one day is better than nothing. So maybe if I didn't do that one day, I wouldn't have had a great conversation that night or gone out or, felt as good as I done or said something I shouldn't have said. And so however you have to look at motivating yourself to just step outside the box, think outside the box, and just do something that interests you, I think you'll be surprised at the snowball effect and how, oh, well, if I can cut my own hair, yeah, maybe I can cook my own food. Maybe I can mow my own lawn. There's just so many other aspects of this cone of learning, but also this intellectual wellness that we can all grasp. And then, spanning to your job, your workplace, or your own business, are you in not enforcing? Are you empowering your current employees to do things like this? Or if you've got someone in finance, have you ever encouraged them to go on the sales floor, or a salesman go up to, or just be that kind of a community and build that kind of culture so that everyone is winning constantly and building that momentum constantly, because you know what, it's going to reflect in your business, it's going to reflect in sales, it's going to affect and affect your finances. Hit a wall, hit that roof wall, like in the stock market, it's not going to hit that resistance level and just stop. It's going to overflow. Yeah, there might be a resistance level from the last time you did it, but that cup can get higher, that cup can get longer. And so that's just to me the foundation of intellectual wellness for SoCalQOL. And now that I've done what I've done with my body and my diet and my fitness, now that I've been able to even cut my own hair, and ultimately I'm saving money. Ultimately, I'm now branching into financial wellness, because if I can't afford to get a good haircut, I can do it myself. If there's a day where I need to get a haircut and I don't have the time, how much is your time worth? If you can't spend $35, let's say 25 plus tip, you can't spend the $35 on a barber shop haircut. Or if you're a lady, obviously I'm talking out of context here because I don't have any experience in cutting women's hair, and I know it's harder. But if you can save that money, why not? Or at least every other time. Or, let's think about your kids. Let's say you want to learn how to cut your kids' hair because you know what? They're kids. They're not going to care that much. No one else is going to judge your kids for their haircut. And if they do, screw them. But all that to be said, I think us having that culture, building up our intellectual wellness to a point where we're always striving to learn new things, it's just gonna branch off into other types of wellness, and we're all gonna be better people because of it. And one thing I wanted to leave you guys with is, and maybe something you guys can challenge me in 2019. Some of the things, and I'm gonna have to pull up my notes because honestly, I don't remember everything I write down. Is usually why I write it down. Um, so here's some stuff, and so I'm stemming. This is stemming from environmental or sorry, this is stemming from intellectual wellness. So these are some things that I personally will learn from, and I've actually already done one of them. Wow, I didn't even realize that. That's great. So learning new things, learning new concepts, and before I forget, I should have started with this, and I apologize. But I'm actually gonna. Oh, did I just? Yeah, I just got out of that. I'm gonna go to essentially what the definition of intellectual wellness is. It's encountering new ideas, continuing to expand your knowledge, participating in scholastic, cultural, and community activities. So, all in all, you're living life, but you're also being, if anything, you're being super intentional. I think a lot of times when we as human beings, we sometimes forget that we we aren't always learning new things unless we have to unless we set aside the time to learn them. And so for me, when it comes to intellectual wellness, but it also comes to just being a SoCalQOL team member, is you know I want to do things that are always going to make me a person that not only can give value but that adds value to myself. And I'm making myself more valuable, and I'm just setting myself up to win in a lot of different areas versus like, oh, if I've never, if I've never cut my hair, but I get into a situation where someone has a problem with their hair, I at least will have the confidence to go, well, hey, I've cut my hair before. If you just do this and do that, it'll help, contour, it'll help even out things, or it'll thin out the top, whatever. And just having that trust with somebody else, knowing that oh, like, wow, Scott actually knows how to do that. That's crazy. I wonder what else he knows. It just could lead to so many other things, either better relationships with other people, maybe even your family members, people having a service or a product that will help them, and they trust you, so they buy it from you. But really quickly before we go, I'm just going to throw out some things that I would like to accomplish this year. Kind of stems from the hashtag 365 experiment, but I'm not doing them every day because I can't do these things every day. But my thought is, if I'm thinking about them every day, at least there's a good chance that I'm gonna do it if I'm being intentional to bring it up to myself. So that's basically it. But one of the things that I had already done actually this week was, and I was planning on doing it at sometime this year, but is put up bird feeders. And this is now kind of into the environmental side of wellness, but it's still an intellectual, part of learning new things, new concepts, new knowledge. And it took me about an hour. I actually streamed it on Twitch, and as I was doing it, just like we were talking about cutting hair, feeling it out, playing music, I just kind of like understood. Okay, I was like, okay, well, if I put it here, then this is going to happen. So if I don't put it here and I put it here, then at least that takes care of that problem, or so on and so forth. And so I went through that. Like I said, it only took me an hour, put it up, but it's one of the two or three things of environmental wellness that I want to do this whole year, and I feel good about it. If I felt good, it actually is something that my wife wanted to have done. It's something that Remy's, our cat, is going to be able to watch birds outside of our window and just get that little visual stimula for him. And so it's like a win-win-win all across the board. And now all we have to do is wait for the birds to come, because I did some more research and found out that it could take up to 2 months, depending on the location, the amount of birds that you have in your area, all that good stuff. So still don't have any birds, but it's only been a few days, so we're not worried about it. But the worst case scenario is we just start throwing bird seed everywhere, just all over our yard. And then by that point, once a bird does find one of them, they'll probably search for more. The more they search, the more they'll look around and they'll find it. I want to plant and landscape at our rental, or yeah, we rent. So at our property that we lease or rent, there's just certain areas that just need a little love, and I don't expect our landlord to do it. They've always encouraged us to, plant things and do anything like that, and they'll totally reimburse us, especially if it's like a long term planting of some sort or landscaping. But for the most part, for me, it's just it's gonna get me outside. It's gonna make me bond with nature, but I'm also gonna learn something from it, because I'm gonna be like, oh, I can't do it this way, or I can't do it at this time of the day because it's gonna be too hot, or I can't do it after a rainstorm because obviously it's gonna be too muddy. Just going through that experience is gonna be very healthy for me, even though I have no plans of starting my own landscaping company, or building a forest of any kind. But planting too could be gardening. We've already got green onion, celery, jalapeno, mint, and mixed greens that we have planted. And granted, I think I only really use the green onion because that's a more of a weekly growth thing that you can actually use on scrambled eggs and things like that. But we even have little avocado seeds that we've been letting them sit in water for, I mean, it feels like months, and they just take a long time to sprout a little root. And even though one of them sprouted a root, we're trying to still wait to see if it kind of comes from the top and all these things. So, but we're learning. It's intellectual. We're grasping new concepts. I mean, it would be crazy. This is not one of the things I want to do, especially this year. But it would be crazy to have chickens, to grow our own eggs, and or grow to have a chicken lay their own eggs. That way we can, have eggs, quote unquote, for free. But just intellectual. And the last thing in that category was, I want to sew pretty much like an outfit. I want to sew an outfit, maybe not shoes, maybe not a hat, but I want to do a shirt. I want to do some type of pants. Probably not underwear, but I would love to do even like a little set of my own workout clothes, or to work in. I've already gone to the fabric stores around us and checked out fabric and seen what I like, see what I don't like. I'm really trying to get it all made in America. At least some of the wool, or some of the material isn't actually you know from physical America, but when it actually is imported, they actually then put the fabric together. So it's like a halvesy, but that's probably going to be for another conversation, because that then branches into not only financial wellness, but just the future of our economy, and they're being resourceful. So I'm trying to look at anything else that's worth sharing. No, I think, yeah, that's basically it. So all that environmental stuff to me kind of stems from the intellectual, and so yeah, I want to encourage everyone right now, if you have had any doubts about being intellectually well, we'll say, or at least learning new things, having a new concept introduced to you, and then being able to actually apply those things in your life. You're not alone. Hopefully, you're able to follow, subscribe to this channel, hit that, you know, bell icon so that you get updated with every new video. But as we do more of these videos and do more social media on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, those little intellectual wellness tips will be there to hopefully motivate you. And even if you have to wait till those get put out to then take that first step, awesome. And then from there, if you have any questions or concerns or any of that kind of stuff, we'd love to help you. So, anyways, guys, so excited that I was able to share this foundational episode of intellectual wellness with you. Basically, the longest individual podcast for us. So, I apologize, but I don't apologize because you know what? That's why we do these things. We got to lay the foundation before we build up. And so I'm more than happy to do that. But I'm going to say it's a wrap. We're done. Thank you so much. Have a great week. Woo!